ACG International webinar called The New Employment Landscape, Imminent Risks and Future Challenges for Employers During and After COVID-19. My name is James Wood. I'm representing Legal 500 today. I'll shortly introduce Edith Nordman of ACG International, Managing Partner of ACG International in Amsterdam. But before that, I just want to say a few words of housekeeping and give a sense of what you can expect in this afternoon's webinar. So we're going to be covering a number of topics throughout the session, or rather Edith will, and we'll be joined by panelists representing the HR and legal functions of a number of businesses to give a practical take on the issues. Edith will introduce each of them more fully when it comes to the Q&A session, but just to kick off, I want to say a huge thank you to them for giving up their time, to Gwen Burbage of WeTransfer, who heads their HR function, and Efrat Konfati, Vice President HR for Europe at OYO, Leslie Hessels, Head of HR at ICE Robotics, ICE Robotics, and Sarah Woodhouse, who is General Counsel of Europe and GC for Food and Refreshment at Unilever. So thank you very much to them. Big thank you also to those of you who submitted questions. We have tried to incorporate those in today's agenda, and we'll address some of them directly later. I should say that throughout the session, we will be taking questions directly, so please do submit any questions you have, and we'll try to deal with them as and when the opportunity arises. We'll also be conducting live polls throughout the webinar. These are completely anonymous, so please answer honestly. It should give us a sense of what other businesses are doing, which is very much needed at this time. With that said, I'll turn over to Edith. Edith Nordman, who, as I said, is Managing Partner of ACG International. I'll just introduce her briefly, if you don't mind, Edith. Edith is a corporate lawyer holding expert qualification in employment law. She's fluent in German, English, Dutch, French, and Italian. I think that's all of them. But obviously that gives her great ability to communicate with many international clients in the mother tongue and to understand the different business cultures that she engages with. So obviously vitally important, not only in negotiations, but I guess in understanding cross-border employment issues and the impacts that they're likely to have on employers and their companies. So she's perfectly placed to deliver this session. Edith, please, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, James, for your kind introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this webinar. The title which we chose for today's webinar is The New Employment Landscape, Risks and Challenges for Employers During and After COVID-19. What does that mean? You're all employment law savvy, so this is not a session to tell you about employment law rules and regulation. You know that yourself. Today's session is really about the new balancing act that you are requested to perform every day due to the changed working conditions because of COVID-19. A balancing act between the legal rights of the employer and the care for your employees, between liability and the well-being of your staff. And last but certainly not least, the continuity of your company and the well-being of the community. There is a lot we could talk about today, but what we will address in the next hour or and a half is our 5 pressing issues. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you very much. As James already mentioned, these are summer holidays, holiday allowance, summer holidays 2020, home office, back to the office, and multinationals and best international practice. I have the honor and pleasure to discuss these questions with 4 panelists today. Normally, they would all be sitting on stage in front of you, but as we are all calling in from different locations, mostly from home, we decided it would be best to have them in one-on-one conversations and discuss one of the above topics with the respective general counsel or head HR who was so kind to affirm their willingness to share their experience and best practice with you here today. I would like to start with our first topic, which is holiday allowance. As you all know, Dutch employees are legally entitled to a so-called holiday allowance, which is usually paid with the salary of May. This means additional expense with respect to the net salary in the month of May and additional tax expense in the month of May. Some employers have considered to defer the holiday allowance due to the cash flow issue. There comes the first question for you. Could we have the poll up, please? Yeah, thank you very much. So there are 3 questions within this poll within this first poll in order to see. And again, it's anonymous. Don't worry, you can just fill in truthfully without anybody knowing who has filled in the questions. Please let me read the questions to you. First question is, has your organization deferred the 13-month allowance for May? Very simple, yes or no. Second question is, if yes, for how long have you deferred these payments? For 1 to 2 months, 2 to 5, or more than 5 months? And the third question is, if yes, what percentage of employees roughly gave consent for the deferral? Let's wait for the results. I'm really very curious. Let's give that another 20 seconds. Well, thank you. Let me give a little warning before we have a look at the results. From this end, be aware that if you have unilaterally, meaning without the consent of your employees, decided to defer the holiday allowance, you will have to pay a statutory increase on top of that amount, which very quickly amounts to an increase of 50%. So you definitely don't want to do that, because the reason you want to defer is to not having to pay yet, but definitely not to have to pay 50% extra later on. So make sure that if you defer the payment, that you have that you have a written consent from all of your employees. Some of the companies, that's what we heard in conversation with GCs and head of HR, have also performed a survey before deciding on that question to find out the percentage of willingness amongst their employees. If, for example, you all might have read this in the paper, there was absolutely no willingness with respect to the employees in Horeca, the restaurant sector, to agree to deferment for very obvious reasons, because they all fear bankruptcy of their individual employers. So therefore, it is quite understandable that they wouldn't agree to that. Could we see the result of the poll? Okay, let's have a look at that. Now let's get through the technical side of this, because yes, has your organization deferred the 13th month allowance for May? No, we have 41% voting no, which is the majority, a vast majority. And for the ones that have, sorry, technically going through this. And then let's see, we have some of them 1 to 2 months, some of them 2 to 5, and a few 5 months. And with respect to the consent, let's have a look at that as well. Interestingly enough, my apologies, most of the ones that have received it is between 31 and 60%, and yeah, and some 61 to 80. Interesting. So please bear in mind, I mean, it's a very short notice because these salaries have to be paid very soon, within the next 10 days, actually. If you still consider doing that, make sure that you have the consent of your employees to avoid the additional costs. For our next topic, I would like to move to the summer holidays, which are upcoming. I'm very curious to know, and I will be in conversation with Gwen Burbidge on that, what is your company's policy during COVID-19 with respect to summer holiday already blocked by the employees? Can they decide to stay and work? and take the holidays at a later moment? And if so, does this have to be in summer, or can it be later this year, or even be shifted to next year? I would like to invite Gwen Burbidge to the stage, to the virtual stage, to discuss what WeTransfer has done with respect to the summer holidays, what they have decided. Could we have Gwen Burbidge join? Hello, Gwen.
Hi.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, sorry, this is just some moment of excitement, because before we tested that, we couldn't hear Gwen. Great to have you here. Great to be able to see and hear you, Gwen. Thank you so much. I would like to first introduce you. Gwen is head of HR at internet-based computer file transfer services WeTransfer. We all know your services, and we are extremely happy to being able to transfer big amount of data within a quick time. So really happy about that. She's an experienced international HR director who deals with both operational issues and strategic matters, such as aligning HR with the business's objectives. She has experience setting up new countries, including the recruitment of the initial team and building HR infrastructure. Before joining WeTransfer, Gwen held a number of roles, including Vice President of People Services and Wisdom Director, very nice title, Kidney Dialysis Service provided Davita, and HR Manager at RELX Group, is that right? A publishing and information-based analytics provider. Thank you very much for taking the time of joining us and for having a conversation. I think it was yesterday about what exciting things you are doing at WeTransfer and what you have been doing at your firm with respect to the summer holidays. So could you tell us a bit more of what decisions you have made when it comes to employees' vacations? Have you encountered any difficulties in making necessary changes?
Yeah, when this all started, so early March, we didn't really think about summer holidays immediately. But then as a part of our business is also creating advertisement, and that whole fell flat, as you can imagine, for a lot of companies. Right now it's recovering very nicely because the Adobes and the Microsofts are spending because they are seeing an increase in business, of course. But we had a lot of people who all of a sudden had nothing to do, like events managers who were working on big PR campaigns. The facilities people, of course, very obviously didn't have anything to do from one day to the other. So we got a bit concerned that we wouldn't have enough capacity Q3, Q4 to be able to hopefully then recoup much of the business now. So we did intend to force people a little bit to take some holidays. So for example, the day before the 5th of May, the day after Ascension Day. So we had a couple of days plotted out, and we wanted to close the office for 2 weeks during Christmas. We went to the Works Council, and they didn't like it at all, because they felt people would be responsible enough to take their holidays if we would communicate about it and explain why it would be important. So we did some more research, and we had a meeting with all people managers, encouraged them to ask people to take leave, even if it's just one day, because getting stuck behind your computer, also when you have little to do, but also when you have a lot to do, is really draining. And it really helps to take a day off every now and then, close your computer, switch off Slack, just go out if you can. In the Netherlands, we can. In the US, it was harder, and in the UK. So in the end, we saw that our employees are taking a responsibility, are taking days off. So we decided not to enforce that, those days off. For what we also communicated was, before we were very lenient in asking for a vacation, it was almost always approved. Now we said, you need to give your manager time to make arrangement for you to go on vacation. So you need to be more thoughtful and plan it better. and your manager is allowed to say no, which is also something we never really did. And we will allow you to take more days into next year if we have to say no. The people
How about, did you already have quite some people who have blocked their summer holidays? Because that's usually the period in which people go away for a longer time. And some employers have faced the problems, or at least the questions that employees said, I cannot go abroad. I've booked 2 weeks to go to Spain or whatever, and I cannot go there. I want to give back my days. Please take them back. I want to save them for a sunny day.
Yeah, no, so our employee base is very young, and a lot of them don't have kids, so they prefer to go outside of the vacation period. But we had many who had booked long travels in March and April. We also had some people who booked a sabbatical for this period. So we decided to allow them all to continue working and take their vacation when they can take a vacation. So we did allow that to happen.
Okay, it would be interesting to hear what our audience is doing, and also for us to have a touch and feel of what they think. So could we have the poll up for the summer holiday? I can see a very interesting screen. Yes, thank you very much. The questions to you, dear attendees, is has your organization allowed employees to rearrange pre-booked holiday leave for a later date? And if yes, have you set a limit on when leave must be taken? And there we have 3 options. Leave must be taken in summer 2020. Leave must be taken by December 31st, or leave can be carried into 2021. We'll give you 20 seconds to fill in this poll. In the meantime, I would like to continue my conversation, a very interesting conversation with Gwen. Because there is another thing that I would like to address with respect to going on holidays, and we already talked about the possibility that people were supposed to go abroad. You were mentioning that, Gwen, you were very lenient on that. You said, okay, if you can't go, you just say you do it at a later stage. And what we also hear back from head HR mainly is that people say, okay, I booked travels to Spain, and it seems that maybe it's possible again. If I can go, I will go. So based on Dutch employment law, it is like that if it is risky, and we all know that our government has said no traveling abroad unless strictly necessary. If your employees are going abroad and they are not, they are locked up because of the situation there, be aware that it is their risk, meaning that if they cannot make it back to work, you do not have to pay their salaries for that period. They should be aware of that. There are 2 ways in which you can address this matter from your end as employers. You can prohibit it, which I do not advise, because if you do prohibit and a vacation is booked and they could do it, there might be an obligation from your end to pay the damage. So you do not want that, or at least to compensate them for that. So my advice would be make very sure that they are aware that if something is happening, that it is their risk, what happens if they cannot perform and come back to work, and that it is highly advised not to go, because then it is their choice to stay home and not you prohibiting it. I see some very interesting questions coming in. Can you explain to me? I see a question from Katarina. Let me address that. You can see the questions as well, Gwen?
Yeah.
Good. Can you explain to me if you can enforce as an employer to take vacation days? Well, Katarina, let me distinguish 2 different situations. If the holiday has already been blocked for them, and they have said, I'm going away for 2 weeks in summer, and they want to give it back, you as an employer can tell them, I'm sorry, you have to take your holiday days, and I'm not taking them back. It's a different thing if you can allocate days, as has been done by others, to tell them you have to go on vacation now. It is a general rule that holidays cannot be taken into the next year more than 6 months now, because first of all, you don't want the amount of and the number of days to become higher and higher every day. And also, as an employer, you have to make sure that your employees can recuperate. And this is what holiday is all about, to take a break, especially when now people are working from home, and we'll get to that point a bit later, where you have absolutely limited view on what they are doing. And there are two options how your people are working at home. Either they are not performing, which usually is not the case, or the other one is they are overperforming, meaning they are working for you much longer hours every day. You as an employer have to make sure that this is not happening, or at least in a limited way. And on the other hand, also make sure that they do take summer holidays or other holidays to recuperate and to have a break. I hope this covers your question. Yes, Thijs Herens says, you have to make a distinguishment between statutory and non-statutory days. True, you have 4 statutory, 4 times the weekly amount of days that you can, that is by law, and usually you have 1 additional week. There is a difference between those 2 days in legal perspective. So absolutely, yes. Thank you, Katharina. We also have a question of Saya Lawrence. Let me see. The question is, we can only reject a request for the employee to rearrange the leave if we have good reason. Where necessary, we use Corona as such good reason. So there wasn't really a question of allowing, but only being able to reject the question if we had a good reason. I'll try to answer the question in the way that I understand it, and which is, again, as I already mentioned in the question of Katharina, you have to look at it differently. If the holiday has already been approved by you as an employer, it's different than if people are requesting to go on holiday. So if they want to give it back, there is this legal distinguishment between it. There is even an additional part in which you as an employer, Gwen already said, it's getting busier actually now than you expected. So there might even be a situation in which you as an employer say, you know what, I don't want them to go on holiday. I want them to stay and work, because now it's getting busy and now we get the opportunity to earn some money back. You can do that if you have a good reason. And that's what Saya Lawrence says. Yes, if you have a very good reason, a very strong reason as an employer to say, look, I would really want you to come back and at least not go on holiday, even though we allowed you to go there, could you please come back? One general note about this whole holiday issue, and that applies also to other things, the best way is, of course, to discuss it with your employee. I mean, you need each other. So make sure to talk about it, ask them, and sometimes you get to solutions which are in the interest of employee and employers involved, which are always the best solutions. But we are here to see if there is no consensus, what are you going to do then? Could I have the answer to the polls, please? Okay. 46% has allowed employees to rearrange pre-booked holidays. That's very nice. And then most of you, well, equally, they said you have to take the leave still this year, or you can take the leave and carry it into 2021. Very interesting. Gwen, what do you think about this outcome?
Yeah, I think it's so depending on the business and what is expected. I heard yesterday I was speaking to someone who works at Schiphol, and because there is very limited work at the little booth, for example.
Yeah.
What they stimulate people to take vacation by offering some days for free. So if you take 4 days holiday, you get a 5th day for free. So I do feel that, and I hadn't thought about an option like that, to be honest. So I thought that was quite creative in stimulating. We were also struggling with our facilities managers. We would love them to take their vacation now, but we also understand that there's not much for them to do. So we're using them more from a mental health perspective now that they have coffees with different people in the organization online, to make sure people are okay and take a break. And, so we're changing their role a little bit. But I think, if there's very little work expected this year, I would also want to push for taking your vacation 2020. But as I said, in Q3, Q4, we're expecting more work. Then it's better for us as an organization if they can move it into 2021. So it is very insecure times and we don't know what's best. So as you said, stay in contact with your employees. The Works Council for us is really our voice for the employees. So that's a very good tool to measure the temperature, how they feel about certain measures that we're thinking about, and also making clear to your employees that we really need them to help us, as we call it, survive and thrive this period. We need them to be sensible and think not only about themselves, but also about the larger organization.
Yeah, and I think especially if you show that you that you care about their well-being, about them being able to recuperate, and not only looking at business interests, but definitely also at employees' well-being.
Yeah.
I think in conversation one should get to a best new practice for this year. There are some areas, for example, in construction, where you have the holidays which are very fixed, so they have to go because everything is locked and closed.
Yeah.
In other areas, there are new situations coming up, and what people are afraid, at least that's what I sense from employers, is that once, hopefully in Q3 and Q4, things are speeding up, business is speeding up, that people will then take their holidays and go away because borders are opening up and they can go there as well. So I kind of like what you were mentioning, what they're doing at Schiphol, to say, okay, you know what, I encourage you to take some days now, and we'll give you a bonus day to go away if you take it. So I think that could be an opportunity for businesses to make sure that people take quite some days now, so that they don't keep everything for Q3 and Q4. And of course, on top of that, an employer has the right to make sure that your business is able to work, and that not everybody is leaving at the same time. Most employers have policies in which they say, you have to send us upfront, you have to send us a request, and we will see whether the situation allows all of you to go. And it cannot be a way in which everybody's away at the same time. So there is a certain balance there. I'm looking at the comments and questions, because I also want to be able to answer most of your questions if possible. Let's scroll through that. Okay, what is, Susanna is asking, what is the best practice to avoid holiday days building up and to avoid this to be carried over to 2021? Well, as we already said, you should encourage your people to take their days based on the legal situation. It is like that, and that's fairly new, has absolutely nothing to do with COVID. Is that and then we get to the statutory days, they lapse after 6 months within the new year. So if they haven't taken their vacation of 2020 up to the 1st of July 21, they are gone. So you should definitely tell them that, and also make sure that you get a balance within your company that, people should just take some holiday in order to recoup. Can you allow to turn the number of statutory days into? No, the thing is that statutory days remain statutory days. So
but as an employer, you can decide that people can take more days, right? So you have the 20 statutory days, but if it's really necessary, you have the discretion, I believe, as an employer to decide to make an exception.
Absolutely. It's even like that. Let's keep that a secret. Well, it's always interesting to have secrets on webinars. There is a discussion about whether if you say, I am just bouncing the annuity of days, if they revive after 6 months, especially the non-statutory days. But that's a different discussion. So as an employer, of course, you can say, look, these days, because of the special situation, you may take them up to including, I don't know, August 2021, as long as we pre-discuss who is going when, and you don't go away for longer than 2 or 3 weeks. It should be doable for your company, but it should also be doable for your employees, because, of course, they do want to go on a holiday once the green light for traveling is on again. And we can assume that it's going to be busy on the roads in Europe, but that's an entirely different question. So let's see if there are any other unanswered. Okay, instead of rejecting requests for vacation, can you, as an employer, determine that no holiday may be taken in Q4? Work in a travel bunch and business is dropped at 95%. Expectation is that it will return in Q4. Okay, interesting question. Let me answer the question the following way. We all know that, for example, the Big Four, they have busy seasons in audit, which is at the beginning of the year, and within those 12 weeks, normally it is a rule within the audit section of that nobody within these audit teams is allowed to take vacation. So you can say that due to a pressing business matter within a certain period of time, everybody should be in office. You could say that. You cannot force them in a way unless it is really very, very necessary that everybody is back at the office. But I would definitely discuss it and maybe have a little survey before you impose it, so you can see the percentage of people who is supporting these measures and take it from there. It's always a good idea to have a survey so that people can anonymously tell you what they think about it. So you can address it in a way in which suits you best. So Q4 is a bit long. I mean, it should be 12 weeks Q4, but maybe, you also have Christmas holidays and all these kind of things. So you can really not tell people that they cannot take a few days around Christmas. But I would definitely address it. And if you see from now that, for example, you expect that at the beginning of October, it's going to be very busy, you could say, look, we would like to have as a rule, and I would like it time that in October everybody stays here and you can take days before or after. So you have to work around that. Would you agree, Gwen?
Yeah, I think, the whole period is a bit long, but I think employees really understand when you take it from a business perspective. That you say, guys, we're trying to survive here. We lost 95% of our business. I think people understand that if they want to maintain to have a job, it's important to play their part in getting the organization through it. So I think, we stepped up our communication to all employees also quite significantly over the past few weeks. And we've noticed, the more involved they are and feel, the more willing they're also to help us think, how can we do this? So that could also be an option, that you ask your people and say, hey, we're hoping and expecting in Q4 to really have a lot of work. How do you think we should handle this? We don't want to hire external people because, we can't afford to. And people will probably come with the idea themselves that, vacation should be limited to the absolute minimum during this period. So, but then it comes from them and not from you as an employer.
I think that's a very valuable point, and I think this will help people a lot. I would like to thank you, Gwen, very much for participating here and sharing your thoughts and best practice. And looking forward to keeping in touch. Thank you so much. I would like to move to our next topic, which is working at and from home. Joining for this topic today is Efrat Comforty, who is VP HR Europe of OYO. Welcome, Efrat. I hope the technique is working to bring her up. Working on it, I assume. So working at home, it is really the new way of working right now for, let's say, most of us. So the question is really, do your employees like working at home? Do you as an employer think that home office is effective and efficient? Is there a specific group for which home offices works well? And is there a specific group for which home office doesn't work well at all? So do you as an employer have any idea if the home office at each of your employees' home is Arbo-proof? And what are you doing to find out about that? And another thing which has come up in our preparation is also who is paying for the costs of home office and what are these costs? We have a poll with respect to that part of it. Maybe in the meantime, we can then bring up Efrat. So let's move to the poll first. Here are the questions. Question number 1. Are you as an employer monitoring how effectively home office is working with different employee groups? Simple yes or no. And are you looking to facilitate an agreement with employees to formalize procedures for working from home? When I was sending out inquiries and talking to a lot of you about this topic, people were looking at me and saying, what do you mean? Well, let me tell you what I mean. The thing is that you have signed an employment agreement with your employees based on a situation on which the world was different from what it is now. Most of them were probably working from an office or traveling or whatever. At least it's quite uncertain, or at least quite sure that not all of you people were always working from home, which means that the clauses in your agreement are based on a different reality than it is now. You as an employer are liable for Arbo regulations, not only when they are at the office, but also when they are working elsewhere. In this particular situation, when they're working from home and at home. So that means that on the one hand, there is this balance between trust and productivities, meaning do you trust that your employee is doing what he should be doing on the one hand? How much grip would you like to have on them, and how much do you know about it, and how is productivity going? That's one thing. But then coming to the agreement is that you should definitely have an agreement in which you say, okay, look, We are testing and checking with you what your situation is. And and if you are asking something which is missing, we provide for that. But as you are the one in control of your own situation, the thing is that everybody's working now from home, and you are responsible for Arbo-proof environment, which means, to give you a very interesting example, you should know as an employer if, for example, your employee is living in an environment where he is living together with 20 people in one room and he doesn't have any silent space to work. I think, yes, Efrat is joining us. Great to have you. And we can hear you too, which is really exciting.
I hope so.
I will introduce you in a second. I'll just get to the image that I would like to put in everybody's head before we do that. So if these people are working at home and they have 20 people living in one room together and they need a silent place to work, and this employee of you is deciding, oh, you know what, I know just the space where to turn to, I will sit up in a tree and work from there. Well, if you do not know that, and your employee is sitting up in a tree every day for 8 hours working from there, and he falls off and he breaks a leg or even more terrible things, you are liable. So you should definitely know what they're doing. We'll come to the agreement in a second. Don't worry, it's going to be discussed, but I would like to talk to Efrat first. Welcome, Efrat. Efrat is Vice President for HR Europe at Belvilla Dance Center, Oyo Vacation Homes. She's a veteran HR leader focused on empowering teams and building great places to work. She has a successful track record of building, transforming, and operating HR operations and customer support functions. Before joining Oyo, she was HR director with Optiver, a proprietary trading firm and market maker for various exchange-listed financial instruments. Totally different branch. So here she drove a culture change in the service and education groups, focusing on partnering, data-driven mindset, and inclusion of diverse opinions and culture. She has also served as the leader of several services groups at eBay. So a very broad spectrum that you have seen. And as we have discussed before this week, you also had a lot of international experience and living in various countries. So also sensing the various cultures and legal differences of different companies. Welcome, Efrat. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
I would like to ask you, what steps have you taken from an HR perspective to ensure business carries on as normal with people being at home?
Well, one of the biggest challenges that we have currently in our organization is that we have a very big in-house customer service. Customer service is one group that, as you all know, is very much attached to phone, attached to processes, attached to systems and tooling. And more than that, in this time, is overworked. Because everyone is calling, especially in the travel industry, everyone is calling, everyone needs their refund, their vouchers, their cancellation. So it's a big group. On top of that, you have the regular corporate groups and the technical groups. And what we've done is because we're international and we have already seen what's going on in Italy. Italy is a big market for us with a big employment group there as well. We've seen what's coming on. So what we've said is, let's do test days. Before we even, maybe we will reach a lockdown, maybe we will not, but let's make sure that we are prepared, technically, mentally, and resource-wise, that we are prepared. And for that matter, just before the second week of March, we've already started with test days to ensure that people can work from home. So our awareness was, we were lucky because our awareness was just before, and we basically ensured ourselves that we are preparing the people and understanding where the technical issues are. Customer service employees do not have laptops. We assume that everyone has a laptop these days. We assume that everyone has a camera, that everyone has headphones. In reality, this is not the case.
So what did you do about that?
Make sure that we have very fast from the people that are on lockdown, that do not have the work. So, for example, the sales force that actually needs to move and be in contact with clients suddenly reduced their workforce. So we first borrowed their laptops to give it to the customer service, where we knew that there will be more challenges. And we've decided to play with this until we see what we need. So is it purchasing new laptops and ensuring that we have it to the people in need? Do they need chairs? Do they need screens? What is it that needed? The test days allowed us to identify people that do not have any ability to work from home and prepare for that. It allowed us to see the technical capacity, so the IT capacity and the bandwidth capacity. It allowed us to see who doesn't have Wi-Fi. Turned out that we have people that don't have Wi-Fi as well.
In the Netherlands?
In the Netherlands. So
wow.
how do we support things like this? So small things that we take as an assumptions, the test days allowed us to do it. We had only the luck of 3 test days before Brabant was closed. Is a big office for us. And then we had another week of trial and error. What we did find out that the role of the manager plays a huge role here, because the manager knows if the people are working, are they working, yes or no? Are they productive, yes or no? And then open enough to say, do you have challenges, yes or no?
So from what we saw from the poll, that most people don't really have the exact sense of is going on at home. You would say that at OYO, your managers do know what's going on at home.
Majority of our managers, yes. And if not,
if somebody were to work in a So if somebody would be working in a tree, you know.
Yeah. Either via the manager, and if not via the manager, then you have the HR group that is we did an open hour. So every hour we have a Zoom meeting that is dedicated for employees with a representation from HR to be able to address the topics.
So do you have any cases which were not able to work from home at all?
We have some cases so we had the technical issue of Wi-Fi. That is one that we've addressed, and now actually hot from the oven today, 3 people that basically says, guys, if we don't have a chair, we cannot continue anymore. We are physically to report sick, and that is a solution. That is
so you're providing chairs, right?
We not to everyone, not on every request, but when people are reaching a point that they say, look, this is really crucial for me, then yes. We're looking into opening the office as well for limited amount of people to be able to facilitate for the needs. Now it's possible.
Okay, that's very good. The audience is of course waiting for the question or the answer to the question, why do we need an agreement? So before answering that question, do you have an agreement with your people?
We are in the process of making an agreement.
Okay.
We are not yet there, but we are.
Yeah, very good. Because as you said, and as we already addressed, you as not you personally, Efrat, and not OYO in particular, but the employer needs to know what is going on at home. They need to know what the Arbo surroundings are. They need to have people work on decent chairs if the people are saying that they don't have decent chairs. So you're doing a great job. And the reason why you should have an agreement, and we started drafting one very quickly when this all happened, because we assumed that people would not think about that, is to make sure that you address those matters, that you also address the matter that your employees are the only ones who can tell you what they're missing, like with these free chairs. You cannot go around with hundreds of employees. Do you have a chair? Do you have a chair? Or is your screen big enough? Or do you have a table which is on the right height? One could do that, but it's not doable if you have a lot of employees. So you should just put the responsibility at the employee, addressing the matter, and also limit your liability. Of course, based on Arbo, you still remain liable, let's put it that way, but you can put the let's say the responsibility at the end where the person who can do it should do it, and they should be aware of it, because your current employment agreement does not involve these obligations at the end of the employee. So you're in the process of doing that, which is very good. I hope that everybody understands now that they should be in the process of doing that as well. There will be another question coming up from you. I see typing. Before you even have typed it, the question might be, and what if they don't sign, right? So what if they don't sign? Let me put it that way. It is a reasonable proposal from the employer. We all know jurisprudence like, Toxie Hoffman and all these kinds of things. If you suggest something to do which is normal in the environment, which is not something really crazy, you don't tell them you have to pay all these things, but you have to be responsible to tell me what you're doing and to tell me your needs, because you cannot monitor that. They should sign it, and if they do not sign it, well, then there's your problem which you should address, because then you can see there is a problem anyway. You should get into conversation with them. If you should really not expect people to be to have a difficult time there, and it also, of course, depends on the wording of your agreement. The agreement is not to shift liability from the employer to the employee, but to limit it from your side to the extent that you are not able to see everything what is going on at home. So let's move to the next question to you, Ephod. You represent an organization with a very diverse working population. You already said that you have people everywhere and they're doing different things. Have you attempted to monitor which groups are doing particularly well and which groups are struggling with home working? And will this inform your decision, because that's also a topic that we address today, with respect to whom you will bring back to the office first?
Yeah. So again, are we monitoring? Is it data-driven? And are we doing surveys? The answer is no. We are planning to do it, so we are looking into, and we've done 3 sessions of town halls last week, and we have 2 more this week, to ensure that we have the voice of the employees, that they can give us at least the sense of where it is going easier and where is it not. So, and following that, we are surveying the populations. What we are depending on is on the managerial set, let's say the middle-level managers, to give us the indication of which group they feel comfortable with and which not. It's very clear to us that the customer service organization is the one that needs the physical location and office significantly more, for example, than the finance organization. Finance organization can work strongly, or corporate organization can work very strong independently and from home. Their connectivity to tools, their connectivity between themselves is working better. So for that matter, this is where we are indicating which group can come back to work faster and easier. The other challenge is the 1.5 meter restrictions requires physically significantly bigger space to facilitate all employees. When we are in times of reductions, we're not going to rent more space to facilitate. So we do need to basically prioritize which group comes first from the other. We're doing it based on managerial messages and employee survey.
Okay, and as someone who's responsible for employees in a number of different jurisdictions, we already addressed that. What are some of the cultural challenges this situation has thrown up? For example, in reference to all for one mentality, and are people willing to take, I mean, that's a different thing, to take salary cuts to support business, or does it depend on the country? What are your impressions from that end? Because you have a broad view, especially also having seen Italy starting, and so with respect to others, you have seen more and for a longer period.
Unfortunately, yes, I do see more, and I do see it in really tough times. So we have employees in Croatia, and in March they had an earthquake as well. So the combination of earthquake, the combination of travel industry, the combination of potentially losing jobs, this creates a lot of stress with employees. And what you see is that people are much more willing to be one for all in countries that furlough is in place, in countries that there is no good social care from the government, in countries that they actually sense that that terminations are on the way, and in cultures where engagement is super high. So where the leadership is really having very strong bond with the employees, and that is local leadership, not the company leadership. This is where you see that a request coming from an MD will probably be stronger than a request coming from a founder that is sitting far away.
So which country would you say is top list now?
Well, actually, in our organization, I will need to give the kudos to Denmark. So that is
Denmark.
Yeah, that's where I will give the kudos to. But I can say that every country contributed in their own way, and they contributed from their pockets.
So do you have the top three or
UK, Denmark, and I would say that Italy has the mentality, although they could not really facilitate for it. But
and who is the worst?
You're making me in a very tough position. But I think
you don't have to answer that. You don't have to answer that.
I think that the aid programs put it as well in a different thing. So aid in most countries are either furlough, the worst, then reduced working hours, and the best is the Netherlands. The Netherlands with the Now program is by far the best aid program that was given. So it allowed people as well to feel comfortable, safe, and work full force ahead to facilitate for recovery.
Yeah, because time reduction makes people really nervous. I have seen that from countries in which, let's say, multinationals have requested time reduction for certain divisions, not for the entire company. And the people there got extremely nervous.
Yes, time reduction and furlough is putting people in a very stressful and anxiety situation, and fear. Basically, fear leads everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Netherlands created an environment that, at least for 3 months, was focused on really healing the business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we of course didn't know at the beginning how long it was going to take.
Yeah.
Well, you knew better because you had seen Italy, but I see that we have to answer one question here, which is if we have already incorporated via the employment agreement with the house rules, let's say, would it be sufficient to send an email referring to these and adding the language as to responsibility, or does the part as to responsibility need to be in writing again? Well, let me tell you, Warda, very good that you already included it in your rules. That's very clever. It really depends. That's a really lawyery answer. It really depends on your exact wording, and you would have to read that yourself in order to give the answer whether this is sufficient. If you think it is not sufficient, it would definitely be worthwhile to send them an additional agreement, and also pointing out why you want to do that. Not because you want to cover the company's ass, pardon my French, but because you care about your people and you want to make sure that everybody has what they need. And that way you really tell them where your focus is at, and that's the employee well-being. And you can't do it at home because you're not there, and you're also not supposed to be there. Unfortunately, Efrat, I will have to jump to the new topic. It was great talking to you. Looking forward to staying in touch and continue the great work. Thank you so much for being here today and also giving your time in advance. Let's move to the next topic, which is very exciting and also very frightening, going back to work, which means going back to the office. The question here is, of course, have you as an employer made a choice who should stay working? We already addressed it with Efrat. And how do you make a choice who should be working at home and who should be amongst the first coming back to the office? Usually what we have seen is that, you know, the 1.5 meter thing, the screens, the stickers and all these kind of things can be organized, or at least it's the you know, the hardware part of the business, but the software part of the business on how to do that and who to let back and who not, that's much more difficult. And I would like to get into conversation with Leslie Hessels, head of HR of ICE Robotics. Yes, it seems to work. Great. Can we also hear you, Leslie? No. No? Guy, could you give Leslie a voice? There. Okay, working on that. Let's first have a poll before we talk to Leslie. Could you say something, Leslie? No, still not? Okay. The poll. Back to work. Have you decided as employer, let's see the questions. Yes. Have you decided which employees will be called back to work first? Simple, yes or no. If yes, what was the main reason for this decision? Now, then we have 4 options, which is we are recalling employees who have not performed satisfactorily during the lockdown. We are recalling employees who have expressed a desire to return to work. We are recalling employees in roles we cannot monitor or manage remotely, or any other reason. And the third question is, are you looking to facilitate an agreement with employees for return to the office? You see, I'm a big fan of agreements. Anyway, as you fill in your answer as quickly as possible, I would like to see whether we can talk to Leslie now. Leslie is head of HR at ICE Robotics, EMEA, a leading company in commercial and industrial cleaning equipment that is developing, manufacturing, and deploying autonomous robots for the cleaning industry. She joined ICE Robotics in 2020 and is responsible for building up and leading its HR function across the company's newly launched EMEA operations. She was previously head of HR at Disney-owned Endemol Shine Group, a Dutch-based producer and distributor of multi-platform entertainment content. And before that, served as head of HR at EPCOR, an aircraft maintenance and repair company owned by KLM and Air France. Welcome, Leslie. Great to have you here. And as we already priorly discussed this week, what really struck me in a positive way, by the way, is that from what you told me very enthusiastically about ICE Robotics, which firm is manufacturing and selling and training people on having robots cleaning, your main concern, even though your product is robots, your main concern is people and the well-being of those people. So I would like to ask you, have you sought to identify which employees are struggling with home working, and how was that has informed your decision on whom to bring back to the office first? Leslie.
Yeah, we have indeed monitored it. Again, I think similar as Efrat said, we haven't yet done any official data, but we have actually been in touch with our employees on a regular basis. We started already quite early to have weekly calls with the management, checking in how everyone's doing, but also, of course, their own managers should check in and colleagues help each other. From HR, we play a role, so we're also in touch. We're quite a small company still, so we can actually do it and be in touch from the HR team to the employees. But now, since the last conference that we had, the sort of coming back to work is becoming closer. The possibility is getting closer and closer. So that led us to think about how shall we organize it. We have the luxury of having an office where we can facilitate quite some safe working, because we have just entered into a new facility and we can do it. But still, you need to be careful about how many people do you let come back, because they're going to travel to work, they're going to use the same bathrooms and stuff. So we did agree that it needs to be a limited amount of people.
Let's have a look at what our audience has done. 1 second. Let's see. Okay. Have you decided, 1 second, yeah, which employees will be called back to work? Well, 23% has decided and 26 has not decided yet, which means that half of the people still have to think about it. Then let's see, on the priority list, we are recalling employees, 16% is saying, who have expressed the desire to return to work. And then the rest is less. So how about you? Who are you calling back? The ones that desire to return to work, or the ones of which you have the idea that they struggle working at home and not desiring it like that, not expressing it?
Well, we've got a lot of people desiring to come back in. So it was actually quite challenging to make sure they stayed away during the beginning of the sort of intelligent lockdown. So we feel there's 2 reasons for getting people to come back. Obviously, there's quite some challenges with us starting up the head office and growing as we are. So there are some people that we are going to need to have on the site for our new warehouse, for example. So that will play a role. But yeah, even more importantly, we feel that we should take a look at how the people are doing and who needs it to come into the office as well.
Okay, so your approach is really people needs based, and not so much that you have the impression that it doesn't work from the business perspective, if I understand you correctly.
Yeah, that's totally true. Like I said, some people we will need to have on site because they need to do a specific project, but for the most part, it would be the people that we feel could use to be on site, depending on how they're feeling and coping with the situation.
Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, due to all these technical doodah and the thing that we also are limited in time, unfortunately, we have to continue our conversation at the later stage, but it was really nice to hear from you and to have this balance of really caring for people and getting that from you, even though if your product is a robot, that people are the ones counting. Thank you very much for sharing your views on that. And well, look up their robots. It's really cool. And you might also see them in supermarkets and hotels. Very, very nice. Thank you very much, Leslie. While we get to the next topic, I mean, we could talk a lot about going back to work, and I will answer some questions here in the meantime. But Sarah Woodhouse of Unilever has offered to speak here as well, which we are very happy with. And Sarah has to attend another meeting, and therefore, could you please bring her up now? That would be great. In the meantime, I will answer some questions here. As long as the government advises to work from home, can you require employees to come to the office, even in the cases where that is not strictly necessary? Well, Wouter, thank you for your question. The answer is that if your environment is safe for the employer, and if you see that things are not working, it is not a prohibition to have people at work. The government says, if possible, stay at home as long as you can. Stay working from home. So if in your business there is a problem where you require your people to be on site, you can get them back, but make sure that they are safe all the way. Sarah, welcome. Can we hear you as well?
Hi, Edith. Hello, everyone.
Wonderful. Great to see and hear you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Sarah Woodhouse is General Counsel Europe and General Counsel Food and Refreshment at Unilever. She moved to the Netherlands to take on her current position in July 2018, but you're in the UK now, right?
No, I'm in the Netherlands, Edith.
Oh, you are. That was my bad. Anyway, before that, she was based in Singapore and worked as Unilever's General Counsel for Southeast Asia and Australasia, a position she held between November 2013 and July 2018. She's currently leading on Unilever's global response and to COVID-19 from a legal perspective, working directly with the CEO and leadership team to coordinate all measures that are having to be brought in place now. So, Sarah, great to have you. Even though you have such a great, lead role and huge a program every day, so it's great to have you here today. You have, of course, a bird's view on what is happening around the world in your role and position, which also could give some insights on the various rules that apply. We already talked about it yesterday, the rules that apply in various countries, and you as a company and a multinational actually even trying to be ahead of those rules and being better in applying best practice. Therefore, you have looked at the work from the situation. You have your CEO has also said, because we're talking about coming back from home to the office, that's something that people are really nervous about, employers and employees alike. So your own CEO has said, why hurry to get people back to the office? Things are going well. From your perspective as the GC of a large multinational, is this working from home going to be the new normal?
Yeah, so thank you, Edith, and yes, it was great to hear from Leslie, just before as well. Certainly from a Unilever perspective, we've been looking at really what's the rush, to get our office-based, employees back to our offices. Clearly we have, a large supply chain. Many of our frontline workers obviously have continued to operate and work through this period. So we're looking at the office-based teams. But what we've been blessed with and why we're not in a hurry to rush back, has been the technology. We invested and launched just before COVID-19 Microsoft Teams, which has worked incredibly well in ensuring that we can have, connection across geographies around the world. And actually, it improves the frequency of the connection with teams around the world. So you can have virtual country visits, to Australia, Indonesia, to Europe just this morning. So really that has helped bringing us much closer. We've also, as Unilever, and I'm sure many organisations the same, we've been holding live town halls. So, from the legal perspective as a function, we've had live town halls. So everyone sees, where you work, and that's truly authentic as well from a leadership perspective. Everyone obviously seeing each of us, in our offices and environments today, and that has resonated really well. Our CEO, Alan Jobe, holds a weekly connection with employees around the world, where anyone can ask him any question, and we deal with those questions in the time that we have. So we feel as an organisation over this period that the trust and the engagement has risen enormously. We have increased the speed in which we have digitalised. So just from a legal perspective, we've heard and we've held virtual AGMs around the world. Uh-huh. We've also really furthered the use of digital signatures. Digitalization of contracts has gone so much faster than we could have ever envisaged. So for us, COVID-19 has brought some benefits and some good things out of the bad. But also we've learned to have fun virtually as well. We've had virtual fitness classes. We've had training. We have a legal learning week happening virtually globally, for example, and really encouraging our teams to embrace and use this time to further develop themselves as well. So in that respect, we are looking at it prudently in terms of that return to office.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. So that if from what I sense that you're saying also is that in a way, this COVID-19 situation has brought you more together as a company and closer to each other worldwide than one would have imagined if you were still flying around and visiting people in person. And also being a catalyzer for just speeding up processes, which usually digitalizing things takes forever because then people report hiccups. And now it is just pure need, and then things work. So what are your instructions actually? Because you have country heads and also HR, people responsible for the respective country. What are your instructions with respect to some topics that have been discussed today? For example, people who would not be willing to, of course, this is on country level, but what to take their holidays or to report from home what is not working. What are your general instructions to your country heads on HR level, how to deal with that?
Yeah, so many of the questions we've needed to elevate and actually take at a global level, and to provide recommendations to our country general managers to ensure that we have consistency across the world. We have Unilever, comprised of many brands, but also within that some very different businesses, retail operations, as well as the brands that we all know and love. So having consistency, has been really important. And what we've done is really adopted, first and foremost, looking at the WHO guidelines, first of all, and then obviously looking at local government guidelines, and looked at it as to whether we as Unilever are happy with the approach of local government and whether, in fact, we need to be more conservative and more prudent. And so that's been the consistency of the advice that we've given. And a lot of the decisions taken in country also have to be approved by our CEO and by our issue management team in advance to ensure that we are adopting that consistency and sharing the best practice as some of these questions come up.
Which one of these rules are you most proud of, generally, if you see it as a worldwide rule?
For us, what we're working on at the moment and what we have consistently across the world, is our approach in terms of we have a tiering program in line with WHO, and we have adopted that globally. We consistently on one day said that everyone needed to work from home globally on the same day. That was a decision taken very difficultly at the beginning of March, but within 24 hours, felt like the most obvious, solution to move us forward. There was a question on the chat in terms of vulnerable employees and return to work. What we're looking at for Unilever is that return to work really has to be voluntary at this stage. There is no rush for us. It would have to be voluntary, obviously, once we have the clear green light from a country perspective. But the safety of our employees, and obviously their families, is our greatest concern. So we are in touch, with our employees and the most vulnerable, of them. Making sure that, as we progress in certain countries to return to office, that we keep, those vulnerable employees shielded. That for us is really important.
Okay, excellent. I can see Edith is back in the room now, so wait a couple of seconds. She should be.
Yeah, and I can see the other question here. How to deal with employees that may refuse to return to office because they don't feel comfortable. As I say, for us, we are putting in many measures to really build confidence, for our employees. It is voluntary. Everybody has their different circumstances. And certainly for us, no one should feel forced to come back to office. But having the education and the training and the openness, as to the tools that we're deploying, and communicating that these are really to protect you and to protect your friends and colleagues is really important.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. You dealt with that admirably, Sarah. You're a pro. I think Edith was going to ask you. She's not quite on the line yet. So she's just appeared, so I'll step aside and let her. Thank you very much.
At least, Sarah, thanks for saving us all and taking over the show here. That's really great. But as a professional, I wouldn't have expected otherwise. Yes. You have already answered so graciously the questions that the people are. Thank you for doing that. One of the challenges you already talked about of the multinational faces is dealing with countries that have very different situations, laws and customs. One of the things that you already said is consistency is the magic word. As lawyers, we all love that answer, of course, because that's what we're always trying to do. But even something as basic as knowing how far apart employees should keep from each other and challenges and so on is different in various countries. As you know, the Netherlands is the only country keeping 1.5 meters distance, whereas the English-spoken countries are either 6 feet, which is about 180, and there are even 2 meters in other countries. So which rule do you keep? Based on consistency, and how do you decide on that?
So this, in terms of the consistency, what we look at is obviously from a Dutch government perspective, the recommendation for 1.5 meters. We will obviously not go any less than that, but working together with our expert in-house occupational health team, and together with external public health individuals that are also supporting us, we will put in place the measure that is right, which will be the 2 meter rule, because we have to have consistency across our sites. So really looking at external best practice, but obviously not going any lower than the country government rules.
Perfect. Yeah, that's so your message to all people working and multinationals working globally is look at the rules, make sure that you don't go below the minimum in a country, and if you have experience from your international expertise that a bit more is better, apply that to have a consistent way of approaching things around the world. You were already talking about the use of face masks. We all know that in the Netherlands, there was at the beginning of this crisis, there was this boy who was working at the supermarket, filling up supplies, and he was coming with a face mask, and he was dismissed because he was not allowed to wear one. So that would these are the things that people are trying to on the one hand saying, I don't want people to be frightened because he's wearing one. On the other hand, one could have said, okay, let's wear one, every one of you, and then nobody should be scared anymore. So the responsibility, having an overview of the same, have one consistent view on taking things that are supported but from top down and also from bottom up. That's what I hear from you. And then we can go through these times and get back strong as ever. I know that you have to jump off to a different meeting, and I very much would like to thank you for everything and for being here and sharing your views. So I'm gonna let you run to your new meeting, and thank you very much for being here, Sarah. Looking forward to being in touch. Thanks. And for all other people on the call, apologies for the technical hiccups that we faced, but it was caught up by all involved. And of course, we still have some time to answer some additional questions, have we not, James?
Yes, please do, although you don't want to give away all your secrets. I presume you want people to come please address the questions that remain.
Yes. Well, I do not have to address the question. I do not have anything anymore on my screen or audio that has been covered, right? Then about, I saw, let's see, what else do we have here? It was mainly, I can't see anything higher than the technical thing. Please type in your questions if you have some, and if possible, I will gladly answer them.
Yes, I'm not sure if your screen is displaying the same information as mine, Edith, but the last question, or the most recent one we were asked, was somebody asking whether or not you'd already dealt with it, how to deal with employees that may refuse to return to the office because they don't feel comfortable. I'm not sure if you had time to address that before the server crashed.
Oh, yeah, no, I didn't. I did see it somewhere, but exactly. Okay, so let's talk about that. This matter was already addressed at the beginning of not our webinar, but of the COVID-19 situation, in which people already at the beginning felt a bit insecure of going to work. Already there, it was quite, the message to the employer was that you would have to make sure that the working environment is safe for your employees. And if you do so, according to our IBM rules and to best practice now, your employee, if needed at the office, has to come back. If he's not, then there are several, if he's refusing to do so, there are several rules which are, or possibilities which are acceptable. If he's sick, if his family's sick, if he's sneezing or whatever, then of course he has to stay home anyway. So you would first have to check whether he's ill, and if he's not ill or his family is not ill, and due to those rules he has to stay home, because that's something that you have to obey. If he just refuses, or her, sorry, it could be him or her, if the employee refuses to come back just out of a sentiment that the person doesn't feel comfortable, you would have to ask what the exact problem is. That's my advice, for example, because they have to travel by public transportation or something like that. And if there is just a general not well-being of being at the office, this you can, well, I don't like the word force, but you can tell them that they have to come back and that otherwise it's refusing to do work. I hope that the question
from Katerina said, when drawing up a plan or a policy for returning to work after COVID-19 for an employee plan, what in your mind should necessarily be considered or included apart from the well-known recommendations? So what should employers be putting in these plans for a return to work? What are your top tips?
First of all, you should have a look at your office surrounding, because even in big South Axis offices, there are things like elevators. Let's talk about elevators. These are really cages in which you are locked up with not too many people, hopefully. Some of the owners of the buildings have already put little circles on the ground in which, for example, only 2 people can go into an elevator. One facing one way and one facing the other, so they don't cough and sneeze into the other's face, and keeping the 1.5 meter distance. But what does that mean for a company in a tall building where you have to have 2,000 people going up to work in the morning? That means that you have to be more flexible in bringing people at work, so that they don't have all to be there at 8:30 or at 9, because otherwise you have to take into consideration how are you going to handle the getting into the building. So one of the things that you should definitely take into consideration is, how do these people get into my office, and how are we going to do that? So there is some flexibility that you have to build into your coming back to the office with respect to boarding the office, coming to the office, going to the office, how lunch is organized, because some people they have their cafeteria at the office offering lunch to people. You would have to think of whether this is still according to the rules. So mainly people, what they have done is you have to take your own lunch. We are not offering it anymore. or if you are offering lunch, to make sure that these packages are at the employee's seat when they arrive. And these things you have to, it's like drafting a contract. You have to look at your current situation and think through what's happening when your people are coming to the office, and every time which of the situation could happen, and based on that write your policy, because there is no general policy of what you have to do. You really have to look at your current routine, well, not the current one, the one before COVID-19, and how this would change once people are coming back, how many people are coming back, and what's happening throughout the day. And based on that, you can write your policy and then share it with others and see whether you forgot something. This is really how to approach writing your policy.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It appears there are no more questions for the moment, so I guess we should draw things to a close now. But look, a huge thank you from the Legal 500. It's great to see so many people in the room still, in spite of the hitch, so many senior people. And it's great to see so many questions coming in. It's obviously a hot topic. We didn't get to cover everything, so I'm sure Edith's presentation has given people a lot to think about. Edith, presumably you don't mind if people email you after this?
Oh, no, absolutely. If you could bring up the slide
Yes.
with my details, I'm happy to answer your questions. Don't be shy. These are really unprecedented times, which ask unprecedented work from you and decisions. So I'm happy to share my views on that and listen to your questions and answer them wherever I can.
Excellent, thank you very much. We will also have a sort of redacted recording of this available shortly. So if anyone's interested in reliving the presentation, please do get in touch and we can send you a copy. So look, thanks once again to Gwen, Efrat, Leslie. Apologies, Leslie, that we didn't get to hear from you quite as much as we would have liked to. Sarah, and of course Edith, for a wonderful presentation. I think that's it from me, at least. Just to say, this is part of the series of webinars Legal 500 will be running next up on Monday morning European time. For anyone that has an interest in Egypt or business activities there, we will be hosting a webinar with LDIB advocates called Egypt, Treading Uncharted Waters, Crisis Management and Planning. So please do join us for that if it's of interest. But Edith, any final thoughts from you before we wrap up?
Well, big thank you to all. First of all, to all the people that I have been in conversation with. It was great to prepare with you and to talk about that and get insights from you. Then all the attendees who took the time and effort to come here and ask questions and listen to us. Apologies for the hiccups, and a big thank you to James and your team. It has been a great pleasure to prepare the session with you all, and all of you, take care. Take good care of your company and take good care of your employees, and have a great day.